There are moments in life when the weight becomes so heavy that words feel useless, when prayers seem to echo back unanswered, when hope feels like a distant memory rather than a living reality. Many people walk into those moments quietly. They smile in public and bleed in private. They carry burdens that no one else can see. And in those moments, the enemy whispers a lie that has destroyed more faith than suffering ever could. He says, "This is impossible. This will never change. God cannot fix this." But I stand here to declare a truth that has shaken prisons, healed broken bodies, restored ruined lives, and raised the dead from despair. Nothing is impossible with God. From the beginning of time, humanity has been obsessed with limitations. We measure, we calculate, we predict, we diagnose, and we conclude. We say it cannot be done. We say there is no way. We say it's too late. But God has never consulted human limitation before acting. He has never paused because a situation looked hopeless. He has never turned away because the odds were stacked too high. The God we serve is not intimidated by statistics, not discouraged by failure, not constrained by time, and not weakened by human weakness. When the world says impossible, God says, "Watch me." There was a young woman once told she would never conceive. Her body testified against her. Her age mocked her. Her circumstances laughed at the promise. But God stepped into her impossibility and turned barrenness into testimony. There was a man trapped in chains, living among graves, rejected by society, labeled beyond help. But God spoke one word, and madness bowed to mercy. There was a shepherd boy standing before a giant trained for war, armed with nothing but faith. And the world saw suicide while God saw victory. God has always done his greatest work in situations where human strength has reached its end, because when human power stops, divine power begins. Some of you listening today are standing in front of walls that look unmovable: financial walls, medical walls, emotional walls, family walls, addictions that have laughed at your promises to change, habits that have chained you for years. Prayers you've prayed so long, you're tired of praying them again. You've tried everything you know. You've asked everyone you trust. You've done all you can do, and now you are exhausted. But hear this clearly. Exhaustion is often the doorway to divine intervention. When you can do no more, God can do what you never could. Faith does not deny reality, but it refuses to bow to it. Faith looks at the facts and still believes in the power of God. Faith stands in a hospital room and says, God is still healer. Faith stands at a graveside and says, God is still life. Faith stands in the ruins of failure and says, God is still restoration. We live in a world that worships ability, degrees, experience, resources, influence. But God specializes in using the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chooses the overlooked, the broken, the unqualified, the forgotten. He takes ordinary people and places extraordinary power within them, not because they are strong, but because He is. Some people think faith is pretending everything is fine. It is not. Faith is trusting God when everything is falling apart. Faith is believing that even when you cannot see His hand, you can trust His heart. Faith is saying, I don't understand, but I still believe. Many people lose hope because they believe God only works when life is neat and orderly, but God does not require perfect conditions. He creates miracles in chaos. He brings peace in storms. He brings light into darkness. He brings purpose out of pain. Think about the storms you've faced. Think about the nights you cried when no one heard you. Think about the moments you thought you wouldn't survive, and yet here you are. Still breathing, still standing, still alive. That alone is evidence that God is not finished with you. Nothing is impossible with God means your past does not have the final word. Your mistakes do not have the final word. Your diagnosis does not have the final word. Your failure does not have the final word. God does. Some of the greatest miracles don't happen in an instant. They happen in the waiting. They happen in the process. They happen while you're learning to trust when answers don't come quickly. God is not slow. He is precise. He is never late. He is always working, even when you cannot see it. You may be praying for a door to open while God is building your strength to walk through it. You may be asking for relief while God is developing endurance. You may be begging for change while God is transforming you from the inside out. God is more interested in who you are becoming than what you are escaping. There are people who think they have sinned too much, failed too badly, drifted too far. They believe God's grace has limits. But grace does not operate on human math. Grace is not earned. It is given. Grace is not exhausted by failure. It is revealed through it. The same God who forgives is the God who restores. The same God who saves is the God who transforms. If God can part seas, he can make a way for you. If God can raise the dead, he can revive your hope. If God can turn water into wine, he can turn your sorrow into joy. If God can silence storms, he can calm your heart. The cross stands as the ultimate declaration that nothing is impossible with God. What looked like defeat became victory. What looked like the end became the beginning. What looked like death became life. The stone was rolled away not to let him out, but to let us see that death could not hold him. And because he lives, your situation is not hopeless. Because he lives, your future is not finished. Because he lives, your story is still being written. Faith does not always change circumstances immediately, but it always changes the person who believes. And sometimes the greatest miracle is not what God does around you, but what he does within you. God is not asking you to understand everything. He is asking you to trust him. Trust him when the road is unclear. Trust him when prayers seem unanswered. Trust him when your strength is gone. Trust him when fear tries to take control. Let go of the belief that you must carry everything alone. Let go of the lie that says you are forgotten. Let go of the fear that says this will never change. Place it all in the hands of a God who has never failed and never will. Nothing is impossible with God means that even now, in this very moment, something can change. A heart can soften. A mind can be renewed. A burden can be lifted. A life can be redirected. God does not require perfect faith. He responds to sincere faith. Even a small step toward him can open the door to a miracle. If you are broken, he can heal. If you are lost, he can guide. If you are weary, he can strengthen. If you are afraid, he can give peace. If you are guilty, he can forgive. If you are hopeless, he can restore. The same power that spoke the universe into existence is available to you. The same love that conquered death reaches for you now. The same grace that transformed lives for generations is still moving today. Nothing is impossible with God. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, not for you, not for anyone who dares to believe. Some people spend their whole lives waiting until they feel strong enough, worthy enough, clean enough, or confident enough to believe God can work in them. But God has never waited for people to be ready. He waits for people to be willing to trust him when they don't understand, willing to step forward even when fear is loud, willing to believe that his power is greater than their weakness. Look at history and you will see a pattern. God steps in when people step out in faith. Not perfect faith, not fearless faith, but honest faith. Faith that trembles, faith that questions, faith that says, I don't know how, but I believe you can. That kind of faith moves heaven. There are people who have given up on prayer because they prayed once and nothing changed. Others prayed twice and grew tired. But prayer is not a vending machine, it is a relationship. Sometimes God answers immediately. Sometimes he answers gradually. Sometimes he answers differently than expected, but he always answers in love. And no prayer lifted in faith is ever wasted. Waiting does not mean God is silent. Silence does not mean God is absent. Often God is doing his deepest work in the quiet places, shaping character, building endurance, strengthening trust. The soil looks lifeless before the seed breaks through, but life is already happening beneath the surface. Many miracles are missed because people stop believing just before the breakthrough. They quit praying just before the door opens. They stop trusting just before the answer comes. But God's timing is perfect, and his purposes are sure. Fear tells you to retreat. Faith tells you to stand. Fear says you're alone. Faith says God is with you. Fear magnifies the problem. Faith magnifies God. You may feel surrounded, but you are not abandoned. You may feel overwhelmed, but you are not defeated. You may feel weak, but his strength is made perfect in weakness. There are storms that come not to destroy you, but to reveal what you truly trust. There are trials that are not punishment, but preparation. There are delays that are not denial, but divine alignment. God sees what you cannot see. He knows what you do not know. He understands how every piece of your life fits into a greater purpose. even the pain, even the loss, even the confusion. When doors close, God is protecting you. When paths change, God is directing you. When strength fades, God is sustaining you. Nothing is impossible with God means your life is not an accident. Your struggle is not meaningless. Your tears are not forgotten. Every moment is held in His hands. Some of the people God uses most powerfully are those who have been broken deeply, broken pride, broken self-reliance, broken illusions of control, because broken vessels carry His glory best. You don't have to understand the whole journey. You just have to take the next step. Faith is not about seeing the entire staircase. It's about trusting God enough to take the next step in the dark. God does not promise an easy road, but He promises His presence. He does not promise the absence of trouble, but He promises victory through it. He does not promise a life without pain, but He promises purpose beyond it. Even now, God is speaking to hearts. Even now, hope is rising where despair once lived. Even now, chains are loosening, fear is weakening, faith is awakening. Nothing is impossible with God means the story you think is finished may only be beginning. The chapter you thought was the end may simply be the turning point. The ground you thought was barren may be preparing for growth you cannot yet imagine. And as long as God is still God, as long as grace is still grace, as long as love still conquers fear, impossibility will never have the final word. Nothing is impossible with God. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, not for you, not for anyone who dares to believe. As this truth settles into your heart, remember this: the size of your problem has never determined the size of God's power. Mountains have always bowed to Him. Storms have always obeyed Him. Darkness has always retreated at His command. The same God who worked then is working now, and He has not changed. What He has done for others, He can do for you. What He has done before, He can do again. Do not measure your future by your fear. Do not measure God by your circumstances. Lift your eyes higher than what surrounds you and anchor your faith in who He is. When you cannot walk, He will carry you. When you cannot see, He will guide you. When you cannot fight, He will defend you. When you cannot hold on, He will hold on to you. Stand firm in this unshakable truth. Nothing is impossible with God. Not the healing you need, not the restoration you long for, not the change you've prayed for, not the miracle you've almost stopped believing in. As long as God is alive, hope is alive. As long as He reigns, your situation is not beyond redemption. And no matter how dark the night has been, the dawn of His power is closer than you think. Nothing is impossible with God means the story you think is finished may only be beginning. The chapter you thought was the end may simply be the turning point. The ground you thought was barren may be preparing for growth you cannot yet imagine. And as long as God is still God, as long as grace is still grace, as long as love still conquers fear, impossibility will never have the final word. Nothing is impossible with God. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, not for you, not for anyone who dares to believe. Let this truth move from your ears into your spirit, from your mind into your actions. Do not walk away unchanged. Do not return to old fears as if you never heard this message. Carry it with you into your homes, into your struggles, into your prayers, into your tomorrow. When doubt rises, answer it with faith. When fear speaks, answer it with truth. When the world says there is no way, let your heart declare, God is my way. There will be moments after this when the battle feels just as intense, when the pressure does not instantly disappear, when the answer does not immediately arrive. In those moments, remember that faith is not proven when everything feels easy, but when everything feels hard and you still choose to trust. Hold on when your hands are tired. Believe when your heart feels weak. Stand when everything in you wants to sit down and give up. God is not distant from your struggle. He is not watching from afar. He is present in the fire, present in the valley, present in the waiting. Every step you take toward Him, He meets you with grace. Every cry you lift, He hears. Every tear you shed, He counts. You are not invisible to Him. You are not forgotten by Him. You are deeply known and fiercely loved. Do not let yesterday's failures define tomorrow's possibilities. God is greater than your past, stronger than your weakness, and faithful beyond your understanding. What you surrendered to Him today can become tomorrow's testimony. What you place in His hands can become the miracle that changes everything. So rise with courage, rise with faith, rise with the confidence that the God who began a good work will carry it through. Walk forward knowing that no wall is too high, no burden too heavy, no situation too broken for His power. Nothing is impossible with God, and that truth is not just meant to be spoken, it is meant to be lived. Stand firm in this unshakable truth. Nothing is impossible with God. Not the healing you need, not the restoration you long for, not the change you've prayed for, not the miracle you've almost stopped believing in. As long as God is alive, hope is alive. As long as He reigns, your situation is not beyond redemption. And no matter how dark the night has been, the dawn of His power is closer than you think. Nothing is impossible with God means the story you think is finished may only be beginning. The chapter you thought was the end may simply be the turning point. The ground you thought was barren may be preparing for growth you cannot yet imagine. And as long as God is still God, as long as grace is still grace, as long as love still conquers fear, impossibility will never have the final word. Nothing is impossible with God. Not yesterday, not today, not tomorrow, not for you, not for anyone who dares to believe.